Thanks, Jeremy, for being here. Appreciate you a lot. Jeremy is a successful criminal defense lawyer. He's a partner at his own firm, has several attorneys who works with him, and it's an honor that you're here today. I want to ask you about your trajectory. Like, how did you start your own law firm? What brought you into criminal defense law, and what tips do you have for other entrepreneurs in the future? And just get to know you generally.
Well, thank you for having me, Sisham. That's a great question. I think one thing with lawyers, with all of us, is that we are all we're sort of wrangling us is like wrangling cats, if you will. And the fact is I'm my own person because I don't play in the sandbox well with other people. I think a lot of us as lawyers kind of have to be our own boss. We all kind of have to carve our own path. Maybe that's because nobody else wanted to sort of play with me in the sandbox, as it were, and that may be that just the people who did eventually, I kind of pushed them out and kind of wanted to do it my way, just like the Frank Sinatra song, right? I just want to do it my way, but I love what I do. I feel like I've never worked a day in my life. I tell folks all the time that I was put on this planet to make a big deal out of very little things, and I think that's what all lawyers do.
Well, it's cool that you feel like you've never worked a day in your life. Because I used to teach. I used to be a law professor. I'd tell my students, they'd always go to the biggest law firm and try to, pay off those student loans and everything. And I tell them, hey, that's where most of your life is going to go. More than even family or kids, 40 plus hours a week, especially when you're a lawyer, is going to go to work. So either love it or don't do it, because that's where most of your time is going. So it's awesome that you love what you do. And talking about wrangling cats.
Okay.
You told me earlier your first partner was your cat when you first started your law firm. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and it's really the only law partner that I've ever had that I've gotten along with extremely well. No, I love my current law partners
your other
now.
Law partners, yeah, exactly.
That's okay. There's no chance they watch anything I do, so we're totally fine to say anything we need to say. No, I love them. I do. No, I left the DA's office and I worked out of my house. I had a P.O. box. I had a dot matrix printer. And yeah, I joked that my cat was my law partner. He was the only one that was ever around. He would come and have to sit on my lap. I'd have to push him off the printer or off of my whatever broken laptop. So yeah, and after a while, I graduated into a bigger office, and then after a couple of years, a law partner, and then after some more years and some law partner divorces, we've built a law firm I'm really proud of. Currently, we have 10 and a half lawyers.
Wow.
All we do is criminal law, and we handle anything and everything in the criminal realm. We're really blessed to be able to do so. Part of that is where we practice. Part of that is the type of clientels that we serve, and a big part of that is our team that also believes sort of in fighting hard for people and caring about people. And caring about ourselves and our own reputation. So it goes from the cat all the way forward to a herd of cats. That's kind of what our firm is too. So ironically, it's come full circle. Yes.
Yeah. No, I saw your Google reviews. You have outstanding reviews, and I agree with you. Reputation is everything, especially in the long term. I think short term, you sometimes see some bad attorneys do the high volume, not quality work product. But your quality is how we do our firm, and eventually that reputation spreads. So tell me a little bit about, when I first started my firm, I always thought I was like a really good lawyer because I had good mentors, but I was not a good business person when I first started my firm. I made a lot of mistakes with marketing and payroll and taxes. There's a whole nother aspect to the business side. So how did you navigate that to be successful now, with 10 and a half lawyers and a larger law firm and good team?
I think we've had a lot of similar experiences this way. You have to learn a lot of lessons the hard way. And what I tell the lawyers that come and work for us is I've already learned these lessons for everybody. You don't have to learn them again. But just there's a lot of simple things that people don't appreciate. When we're lawyers and we want to go practice law and we want to make a business out of it, a lot of times we ignore our weaknesses, and we ignore not only our weaknesses, but we sort of think of it just as practicing law. We think of it just in the courtroom. We
Yeah.
think of it just from a client management standpoint. And I learned very quickly that QuickBooks, for instance, just your accounting is like, it's like snow gently falling. And you go to bed on Christmas Eve and it's fun and it's nice. And, oh, we've got some money coming in here and there's a transaction here and a transaction there. And you don't think about it. And then 3 months later, you wake up and your house is underneath snow. So you have to plan at the outset for all of those things. One of the things that that has been difficult for me over the years is delegating, giving other people responsibility, allowing them to take the reins.
Yeah.
To do things. And when you're a solo, that's one of the things that you learn to do is to be in control. And as lawyers, we tend to be control freaks also. But yeah, taking control of things and doing them for yourself, and then having the discipline to let go when it's time to let go. Otherwise, you're just never going to grow.
I completely agree with you. And I think in both of our fields, it's even harder because it's people's lives that are at stake. You know, immigration with deportation proceedings, or if they could get tortured if they're returned, if it's asylum, or criminal defense. I mean, you know, life imprisonment for a crime they didn't commit, right? So it's hard to let go. You know,
Right,
you want to
yeah.
micromanage each case. You know, but to do it in a way where the quality is still high, like not only have you trained your team and your attorneys, but then you have checks on that quality. How have you navigated that, and how have you still been able to let go but keep that work product quality so high?
You have to trust people, and I feel this way. And the way our firm, the way we operate is I work for them. I work for the lawyers that have come and trusted us with their practices. There has to be more in it for them than there is Jeremy, or it doesn't work. It's just that simple. And that means I have to bring in people who know their way around the courtroom. And I have to be able to trust them to do what they do in the courtroom. And I can't micromanage their practices. They wouldn't like that. And I think it would take away from who they are in the courtroom and their practices. We promise them, our pledge to them is that we are going to be there when they need help. We're going to provide them infrastructure. We're going to provide them some of the know-how. We're going to provide them with paralegal, with the ability to have support bringing in cases, the ability to manage their file, to learn how to do that if they've not learned that part of it. But it always comes around to bringing in people who fit your team to begin with, and sort of helping them, helping sharpen them from there. But there always has to be more in it for everybody who walks into our doors, who takes a job with us. There has to be more in it for them. Otherwise, why should they stick around?
Yeah. What's one of the proudest moments you've had at your firm, like in terms of a case that either your team has done or that you've handled and mentored them with, like something you look back in life and say, hey, I made a difference in that person's life, and you can feel good about all that detail orientedness, all that law school practice, all the money and sweat and time and effort you put into the firm. What's one of your proudest case moments?
Well, I'll tell you, it involves, the one that comes to mind is one of my law partners, a victory that he had. Certainly, and I've got a big ego, and I'll take the Pepsi challenge, and we can sit here and talk about me all day, and I can tell war story after war story and bore just the hell out of everybody. But I'll tell you the story of one of my law partners, and he's a guy who's been with us since law school. I like to say, and I've said this to his face, so I'll say it to you. I've raised him since he was a pup. But he is a phenomenal lawyer, and what he does is he strategizes and he plans, and a lot of times he'll come in with kind of a wild-eyed look in his face about a case and just tell me about what he's thinking, and I'll just kind of joke with him. I'll say, well, why don't we just put it on the website now already as a victory?
Yeah.
And that kind of will back him off a little bit. But there was a particular case that he had, which was a First Amendment case. And what happened was his client was alleged to have sent out a text message to voters. And without getting too deep into the facts and without boring everybody too much, these candidates lost their election, and naturally it was everybody's fault except their own that they lost an election.
Yeah, sounds like a politician.
So yeah, it was everybody else's fault except theirs, and so they actually took these texts, which were fabrications. I mean, the texts were misleading, and they took those texts to the DA and said, we want these prosecuted under this. It's the law in Texas, I believe, and I'll probably get some of the details wrong. If you've ever watched the political ads and they say, I'm Joe Blow and I approve this message, right? That's called the true source doctrine, and the DA, the police threatened to bring charges against this client. Our lawyer, Kyle Tarian, goes to the district attorney's office, and we have a really a good relationship with them, such that we can have frank and earnest discussions. That doesn't mean obviously we don't get special treatment or anything like that, but we know where they stand, they know who we are, and they know how we operate. So I like to think it's a relationship of respect. And Kyle went and said, "Hey guys, this law you're threatening here is unconstitutional. We can do this the easy way, or we can do this the hard way. Okay, drop it. Don't just drop it. And if you don't drop it, I'm going to have the whole statutory scheme thrown out because it's all unconstitutional. If this is the law, then Saturday Night Live is committing a crime every time they make fun of whoever's the president." Yeah. Okay, so there's a First Amendment problem here. Don't prosecute this guy for it. Let's just all go home. And of course, they decided, no, we have to go and prosecute because that's the right thing to do. And fast forward 4 years later, Kyle got the entire statutory scheme thrown out.
Wow, 4 years later.
So it took him a while. I mean, these things take a while to sort of develop. But I can't tell you how proud I am of Kyle and the diligence that he showed, the hard work, and just. Not only that, I wish he would have got paid a lot more money for it. That would have been nice as his law partner. But to see somebody that we brought in, to see somebody that I like to think that I mentored, to see him accomplish something like that is probably, I can't think of a bigger victory for me personally or our firm than that.
Yeah, and to get the whole statutory scheme, thrown out, that changes the rule for other people in similar circumstances in the future. So make a broader impact,
right?
And the right for people to give their opinion, especially in today's climate. I think there's a lot of fear of giving their opinion because on both sides it's so polarized. That I think a lot of moderates may just not want to give their opinion or too scared to get attacked by either side. So you might have even made a difference in terms of the future in that sense.
Well, we're lawyers, so that's what we do. Our weapon is the courts.
Yeah.
And you didn't ask me this, but I'm going to kind of go here anyway, because another thing I do is soapboxing. When you're a criminal defense lawyer, and probably as a practitioner in immigration court too, right? You're in a very similar circumstance that we are. And that is that you've got a lot of bureaucracies that are facing off against one another. And you're sort of the low man on the totem pole. And to kind of be more specific, let me sort of tell you kind of how I mean that. When I go to court, I've got an elected district judge. I've got an elected district attorney who's there representing the state. The prisoner is brought over by a sheriff who is elected. The paperwork is all done by the district clerk's office, who is an elected official. We've got the probation department, who is an appointed official who sometimes sticks their head in the middle of this thing. And the fact is that when you're an elected judge or a district attorney, you don't care about. You're a lot more worried about what these other people can do. And in immigration court, you've got the judiciary, right? You've got the Department of Justice. You've got all the powers that be, and you're just this one guy. Right. And they're going to make policy. They're going to take actions. They're going to make policy because they're scared of one another, and they're going to do it to appease one another. And they do it a lot of times on our backs. During COVID, we were expected to go to the jail and stand by our clients during their guilty pleas. Everybody else got to be on Zoom, things like that. and not that that's an issue, but the point is that my weapon is the court. And if I don't like something, I file pleadings.
Right.
And if I don't like what the judges are doing, then my job is to have a spine and to stand up to them and to make everybody's life miserable through the courts until or unless they recognize our role as advocates.
Yeah.
And it's very easy to find yourself on the bottom of that pile unless you are tough and unless you have a spine. And going back to Kyle's story, that's what he was doing.
Yeah.
Is Kyle said, you guys are afraid of these people in Plano. You're afraid of these politicians. You're afraid of the things that they're going to file. You're afraid of them going to the newspapers. I'm going to give you something else to be afraid of.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we do.
On that issue of being tough and having a spine, with all the immigration news that's happening these days,
Right.
It's gotten more strict, right? More funding for enforcement, more immigration, raids, court hearings. And the judges, they're not elected in immigration, but they're appointed by the Department of Justice. And so, as you know, the Department of Justice is under the president eventually. And so what you're seeing is judges are impacted by the policies. And you see it also with discretion. They had more discretion under previous administration. Same with the government attorney on the other side, Department of Homeland Security. They had more prosecutorial discretion. If it's a simple case, no criminal issues, they're married to a U.S. citizen, why don't we just close it, save everybody resources, and they apply somewhere else? See a lot less of that now. And so if you're with deportation cases, you're going to trial, and then the judges, their records are looking at, whether approving or denying cases. So that toughness, that spine is needed, to your point, more now than ever, including preserving the record. So, I teach my attorneys, you got to really preserve the record. I mean, how much evidence you do, witness prep, legal arguments, a legal brief, because, these days, including going to federal court or appeals, they might be more important than ever.
Absolutely right. And that's advocacy, if you think about it. And when it boils down to it, what you're doing is you're advocating for your client in a way that you're finding different ways to be effective. One way to be effective is to convince the person standing in front of you that you're right. But it's a multifaceted way to advocate, not only to try to convince the person that you're right, but you're thinking 2 and 3 steps ahead. And a challenge that I've always found is there are, and when you're a criminal defense lawyer, there's just cases you're going to lose, and you're going to lose them because the facts are so ugly, and people are emotional creatures. They're going to decide things based on their emotions. They're going to have a result-based decision, and at a minimum, I can make it to where we lay out such a logical argument that if you disagree with me, then you're gonna do damage to your own conscience, and that's just straight advocacy. And there's a lot of parallels between immigration practice and our practice that way. So yes, and I'm always curious to hear from your side of it too. Practicing in front of a Department of Justice judge, some of the challenges that you guys might have, because at a minimum, at least my judge is supposed to be neutral or is not getting paid by one of the parties directly.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's not as neutral in a sense, right? The other interesting part is they're not elected, and so they're going to be there for a long time. You're going to be in front of that immigration judge, a long, long time. And going back to reputation, your reputation is everything. And how you argued that case, how you prepped the witnesses, that you didn't waste the judge's time. I think it's in the back of that judge's mind because that judge may be there, 20, 30 years on that bench, and you're getting in front of that judge again and again. So I think your reputation is going to be super crucial. I think your work product is really important. I think with immigration court, they're under a lot of, judges are under a lot of pressure. And with the new bill, and we talked about this a little bit off the record, there's a lot more funding for immigration detention and ICE raids. but not that much funding for immigration judges. And they're already backlogged. I mean, they're already under tremendous pressure. The courts are non-detained
Are you
docket.
trying to suggest they didn't think this through?
Definitely didn't think this through. I mean,
Okay.
if they wanted to, if one of their policies was to up the number, deportation numbers or even just resolve cases, didn't do a good job with that. But they're under so much pressure already. And then to have an attorney in front of them, we have to advocate. So we have to preserve the record, a lot of filings, huge amount of filing, but we also need to make it efficient for the judge. So how do you give the brief answers? How do you give the right opening statement or closing statement and not waste the judge's time at the same time? So judicial efficiency. And so it's this balancing act, of how do you get the crucial information in, but still preserve the record with the most evidence, especially in immigration court. But yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a different ball game because you're in front of them so much, and the policies are shifting with the executive branch because they're not elected. So yeah, we're definitely seeing differences from criminal law in that sense. I did want to ask you though,
Okay.
talking about criminal and immigration law, there's a lot of cross intersection
Yes.
between the two. As there was a important Supreme Court decision in 2010 called Padilla versus Kentucky, and basically it said, hey, the immigration consequences to a plea could be way more severe. Somebody could get deported, but their criminal case could be dismissed, but it could create a deportation ground for them. And so since then, we saw a huge increase of criminal defense lawyers are like, hey, and that's a complicated area of crimmigration law, where they're like, let me just, get a legal memo and see what consequences there are from an immigration attorney so they're not liable. Y'all aren't liable for that. How have y'all handled that since 2010? And have you seen an increase of that recently with the Trump administration?
Hard to know with the recent ones because there just has not been, we just don't have a very big sample size yet. Padilla was absolutely groundbreaking, and it has been one of a handful of opinions in my practice over the last 15 or 20 years that has really reshaped, I think, the landscape. It's a big tripwire for ineffective assistance of counsel. If you don't, you have and what Padilla says, my interpretation of it and the way I incorporated it is that as a criminal defense lawyer, you have a non-delegable duty to advise your client of immigration consequences related to a criminal case. And so for the viewers at home watching, and just those folks who may not be lawyers or somebody who may not practice in our areas, there are consequences of a criminal case, and then there are consequences, right? There's foreseeable consequences, and then there are unforeseeable consequences. We can foresee that in certain instances that you might get a certain prison sentence based on a charge. You could see potential limitations to your right to possess arms. Those are foreseeable, right? We know that this happens if you are charged with X, Y, and Z, or in a sex case, registration, something like that. Can I predict whether or not you're going to get an invitation from Aunt Betty to Christmas this next year because of this charge? No, that's an unpredictable consequence of the criminal charge. We simply can't see all the ripples that the rock makes when you throw it out into the pond. Immigration falls kind of on the farther end in those standpoints, and in some instances, the courts have said it's very predictable, and in other instances said, well, the client just has to have a clear picture. If they're going to decide to go under the knife, if they're going to make the decision to plead guilty or not guilty, it can be an involuntary if they don't have the right information about immigration. And so as the lawyer, we have to go out there and get them the proper information. In some instances, we'll refer them to immigration counsel to make sure that they have a very clear, focused lens of what exactly they're looking at. In other instances, we can just tell them flat out, look, we plead guilty, we're going to get removed. In some instances, it's pretty easy. Where I come down on Padilla is very simple. And I tell my client, listen, I don't know who's going to be in the White House in 10 years. And I don't know. Immigration law is so white hot, and it is so it's such a kaleidoscope that's always changing, that really the best way we can make sure that you are protected from an immigration standpoint is by not having anything at all on our record. But a lot of times the call is a lot harder than that, because people are living in the moment, and we simply have a binary choice. In most criminal cases, we can plead guilty or not guilty. And in most instances, I take a pretty aggressive approach, and I don't see a lot of benefit in pleading guilty when the most severe consequence we face is removal or denial of naturalization.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I mean, we've worked with a lot of criminal defense lawyers over 10 years on these memos, and they're really complicated. I mean, they're really complicated legal memos, because what often happens too is there may be like a plea deal. And so you have to rework what are the immigration consequences of the new plea deal. And then even just taking a more step back, simple approach, like deferred adjudication, that's still a conviction for immigration purposes. Maybe pretrial diversion without an admission of guilt is no conviction for immigration purposes. There may be like workarounds there too. So it's an interesting strategy to work on. I always find them really fun cases because they're analytically complex too. On top of, you're really changing someone's future outcomes depending on what they can get now. So it's really interesting cases to work on for sure.
Yeah.
Taking a round approach to this, though, I don't think we talked about this enough. Tell me more about the business end of it. So you mentioned the cats thing, but I think you might have been lying to us here, because you mentioned your partner worked with you since law school, so they clearly like you. So it's not just cats that like you. Your team likes you too, but you went through some ups and downs until you finally got this firm up and going. And you mentioned you learned some really hard lessons. Can you give the viewers, if there's anybody out there that's listening that wants to start their own firm and avoid the business part of the mistakes, whether it's marketing, hiring the right team members, what are some direct tips you'd have for them?
Some direct tips. Well, I would say first off, you're not allowed to hire anybody on my current team because I've ruined them. They have the best job ever anywhere, and there's no reason for them to leave. But yes, I think that somebody who is trying to practice law and wants to kind of go into business on their own, you can't be afraid. And you can't be afraid to succeed. A lot of times lawyers, we fear success. And a lot of times I think lawyers talk themselves out of a lot of really good ideas when it comes to their business models, when it comes to their practices, when it comes to allowing other people to help them. I think that as lawyers, we go to law school and we're sort of trained. We're programmed to clutch our pearls and to say, oh my gosh, we can't do that, and oh my gosh, there's got to be something wrong with
liability everywhere.
Oh my gosh, yes, we can't. This AI thing, we can't trust that. We can't do this. And so I think that I think a lot of times I've seen lawyers that have really talked themselves out of good ideas. I've got friends that and I've got friends on. I'm sure as do you, through law school, that I've met through the years that have a lot of different takes on practicing law, on marketing. For instance, a really good friend of mine, I've known him since I was an undergraduate, and he's I tease him about being Abe Lincoln. His dad is a lawyer in a small town, and he just thinks the only way you can ethically advertise as being at the courthouse, right? If you're going to hang a shingle out in front of your door, it better be a small one because people might be able to read it. And that's it's a very, and I've told him this, I think that's a somewhat antiquated way of really looking at it. Now, we don't need to have cartoon characters on T-shirts to market our firms either. We don't have to embarrass the profession, but you have to be able to, you've got to realize that we live in a real world. Customers, clients are going to connect with real people in real ways.
Yeah.
And we just have to sort of be able to be ourselves in that space. And I find that pointless worry just gets you nowhere. So I would say, look, and there's just nothing wrong with making mistakes. If I saw this, I think I saw this on, my daughter and I, we watched the Dallas Cowboys cheerleader thing on Netflix.
Oh yeah,
Are you into
haven't
dance?
seen it.
No,
I haven't
okay.
seen it. Yeah.
All right, yeah. A lot of good stuff there. A lot of good drama, really. It's about the losers. It's not about the winners.
Gossip, yeah.
It's about, yeah. So I mean, they the big part of the show is when they cut people, and nobody cares who makes the team. We want to see you. We're going to focus in and get you. When you get cut from the team, right? But one of the quotes there I heard was, "If your dreams don't scare you, they're not big enough."
Huh.
So that's my takeaway from anybody watching this that wants to open their own firm, unless it's criminal defense, in which case you can do it in Houston or another market other than Dallas Fort Worth, because one's already taken.
Yeah. What's some of the most effective marketing in the modern age? Not the antiquated version,
Sure,
but in the modern age that you found to be successful for your firm.
Networking.
Interesting.
There's no substitute for getting to know people, knowing them, liking them, sending them cases, having clients come back to you and say, thank you for sending me to Susham. He really took care of us. They really cared about us. Other lawyers who don't do what you do, I think, are always your biggest source of business. Beyond that, being recognized within your own discipline. We do a lot of work with Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, getting known inside your industry and out. And none of that's rocket science. And we don't have to be, it doesn't hurt to be good at Instagram. And those things I think are sort of, if you have your core of marketing, and as you work out, I think that those other contact points become important. But you got to master the ones that are really in the center first.
No, I think that's an excellent point. I don't think I do it enough. I was telling you about that earlier. It's just you get so busy with so many other things.
I think you're pretty good at it, by the way.
No,
so
I appreciate you. What I have found it, and I'm not a big social media guy, maybe because I'm turning 40 this month, which is crazy to say out loud. But
I'll trade you.
But I think, nobody uses the yellow pages. So Google, is really where it's at. Luckily, I have a great online marketing team. We're on like the first page. But it took a lot of content. It took a lot of Google reviews, our reputation being on point. It took, great media content too. But I never was good at social media. I would say Google, we have a great online marketing team. I think we're expanding. I think that's maybe the next era. I haven't done it yet, but you see everybody on TikTok and Instagram and things. Maybe that's the next era of how people find us, that find out that we're reputable and good and things. And so I'm always trying to stay ahead or with the times,
Yeah.
It said 40 and it said with the times, both in the same.
Well, it's
which made me feel awful about myself. But yeah, go ahead.
well, no. I think it's about contact points and familiarity, and it may not be the first time that a client hears your name, and it may be the fourth time that they hear your name, and there's a little bit of stickiness. And a lot of times, too, it'll be about confirmation. Somebody will get your name from a colleague, or they'll get their name from a referral, and they may say, oh, I've heard that name before, or I've seen that before, and then they go online and check you out. Can I tell a story?
Of course.
Okay, I'm sorry. No, this is what you signed up for. You didn't know you signed up for this, but this is what you signed up. So I'm going to tell a story here about a marketing story. We had just built a new house, right? And I wanted to have a swimming pool. Okay. My wife really didn't, but I wanted a swimming pool. And
lots of maintenance, by the way.
There's some, by the way, I'm a pool guy and I can come to your house for cheaper than I can handle your criminal case. So I've actually learned how to do it. I'm actually not that bad at it anymore. But so I go and I'm going to go buy a swimming pool. I'm going to go have a swimming pool built in our new house. And we had at the time, just my law firm, we had put a brand new billboard by the courthouse. Okay. We had never done that before. And we don't do that a whole lot anyway, but we put our billboard up there. And my law partner at the time would hide under the table, and he just wouldn't even go to the courthouse because he was kind of embarrassed by it. But that's neither here nor there. So at any rate, I'm going around to pool stores, and what I'm trying to do is, the pools are very expensive. Okay, you probably have 4 or 5. But they're very expensive, and when you're going to build them, and so I'm trying to get the best deal that I can, and I'm showing up to all these different places, and I'm knocking on the door, and I'm walking into these different pool builders, and I'm wearing tattered jeans, and I'm wearing a smelly sweatshirt, and I'm looking like as garbage as I can look, okay? Because I'm trying to show them that I'm broke, and that I don't have any money for a swimming pool. So I go to 2 or 3, and they kind of blow me off. But I go in, and I'm like, look, man, I don't even know why I'm here. I don't have any money, and my wife doesn't want this, and our house probably is kind of too crappy for this anyway. But well, just what do you think you could build me a pool for if this is just bargain basement, right? I'm just trying to be as cheap as I can. So I go to one pool store, and I sit down, and the guy's got his computer there, and he's entering me into his database, and he's asking my name, and he's asking the address, and he's asking just this or that, and he gets my name, and he says Rosenthal. Okay. He says he says, any relation to the lawyer Rosenthal? And I've never heard that in my life, never, not once. And I'm like, what do you mean, the lawyer Rosenthal? He says, God, there's some really big, huge lawyer in town named Rosenthal, and he's got this billboard. I drive by it every single day. So my pool was pretty expensive. That's the moral of the story. So that's what marketing gets you.
Don't do billboards.
Yeah, that's what a billboard will do for your marketing.
Yeah, we've actually never done a billboard. I batted that idea around, but I think that feels like it's one of those like branding things. Maybe they'll think of it like you said earlier, like the 4th time, and maybe it'll work. It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt, and you got to do it tastefully. They can be pretty expensive, and you're not. I don't know that anybody's ever going to go to your office and say, "Gosh, I saw you on the billboard, and you're my guy." But lawyers, we just have this. We break out in hives when we hear, "Oh, a billboard, we can't do that," and we don't really have any. I don't think at the moment. I'm not saying I would, or I'm not saying that I wouldn't, but anyway, it's just another way to get your name out there. All right. So, last question here. Outside of law, what do you like to do for fun? What keeps you going? What keeps you running? I mean, like, is there a hobby? Is there a certain thing that just keeps you rejuvenated and at your best for work itself?
That's a great question. If I had to choose anything, I'd say golf, which is just another way of saying my main hobby is law. I play a lot of golf. It helps me connect with my surroundings, sound. It's a game against yourself. It helps me unplug. Most of our lawyers have a hobby that's outside of it. One of our lawyers is a pilot. He
Cool.
flies, and another lawyer plays hockey. One of them is kind of our resident green thumb. He has a bunch of plants in his office, and it's all fun and games. We get some little flies and other crap because of that. But you definitely have to have something to do that. But probably my main hobby is being a lawyer and talking on camera, which is not practicing law. But you might be able to tell I do a lot of talking.
We're so analytical. It's good to have like that kind of sport to where you turn it off.
What's yours? What's yours?
Mine's a sport too. I played a lot of sports, but right now I play 2-on-2 like competitive sand volleyball, like beach volleyball against these 6-foot, whatever guy hitting it straight down.
Well, they can't see you. You're 6'9".
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so there
That's
you go.
what I am, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So okay.
No, but those are real fun, and my firm has sponsored some of the pros, so I'm really deep into the volleyball kind of community. But it keeps, and when I feel like when I'm playing, this may be how you feel with golf. When you're playing, you're so in the present moment that you're not thinking of anything else. As law firm owners for both those, thinking like 10 steps ahead. What is everybody working on? What are we doing next month? How are we pushing the envelope for this? How are we strategizing on this case? There's a million things going. Whereas that when you're in that moment of golf or volleyball, you're so in the present,
Hmm.
that it's good for, I think, your mind and to relax and kind of de-stress. Although I say relax, I'm playing really competitive. I'm so just as
Okay.
competitive whenever
Well, good.
we're competitive with the
Good. I'm
law.
I'm trying to become. I'm actually considering. I've never gambled online, but I actually have kind of considered, sort of throwing my whole life away and doing that because yes, don't you think the dopamine would be just out of control? I mean, just the stimulus of going crazy, whether or not the Reds score any runs in the eighth inning. You're not no.
At least learn if you're gonna gamble. Let's do it right. At least learn how to count cards at blackjack. Let's
Okay,
do that first.
that gets you tossed out. Well, the
Keep your
big.
it's not illegal though. It's you're a criminal lawyer. It's not. It's only private property, which is why you can get
Well,
tossed
right,
out.
right.
So
But did you know, in the big beautiful bill, did you know that you are not able to deduct? Now, I don't give tax advice, so Google this 18 ways till Sunday if you're watching this. My understanding is that you will not be able to deduct losses. And I
true.
think my understanding is that the professional gaming community is none too happy with this. But
Yeah.
yeah.
No, I think that's a big issue for sure. So you just don't lose.
Well, there you go. There you go. You just got to be good at it, right?
Yeah.
Okay, you can do that.
But I think that's about all I have. Anything you got? Any other last questions or anything, Jeremy? Thanks for being on, by the way. Really
Well, thank
appreciate
you.
it.
I do want to know. I do want to know about your teaching time,
Yeah.
and I want to know about your being a professor, and what you thought of your students, and kind of what were some of the good and the bad and the ugly with teaching. That is something I kind of came here wondering.
Yeah, the good, bad, and the ugly. Well, I loved it when I did it. It was a long time ago. I think it was maybe like almost 14 years ago that I was teaching as a law professor. I only taught for about 5 years, 4 or 5 years. I was a clinical law professor. So for those that don't know what that is, I know we all go through law school, we know, but those that are not, lawyers or went through law school, you have to be a second or third year student. And then we train them on real cases, on our bar licenses, by the way, on the line. So, and of course, people's lives. So very important it gets done right. But the students train under me and they even go to court. It's cool to see them argue a case. We prep them a whole lot. But that was really fun because you got to see how much the students progressed. And then you also it was pro bono work, free work is what that means, for the people that need it. So often like asylum, refugee cases, human trafficking victims. So we really got to help people in need, and the students were learning a ton. So I love doing it. And you have all the resources of a law school. We have it now with the firm, but very expensive, Westlaw and all those things.
Right.
But we had all that there so we could handle complicated cases too. So that was the good.
Mm-hmm.
The bad is it starts to get difficult after you do it for a long time because you start to train them up. They get good in clinic 2, and then maybe if they stay in the summer, and then you go right back to clinic 1, and you have to go back to the acronyms like the INAs, the Immigration Nationality Act, and you want to go a little bit faster eventually. You want to handle more complicated cases, and I think it's one of the reasons I probably stopped. And then the ugly is, generally speaking, clinical staff, clinical professors, they don't get as much reputation within the law school, even though they're handling really complex stuff, as tenured law professors do, teaching a regular class. And I taught a regular class. I taught asylum refugee law as well, but there wasn't like a track to be tenure when you're clinical mostly. So that was another reason for me to start my own firm and be independent. I think the combination of having permanency elsewhere, being really independent, which, by the way, when I was a law professor, I was pretty independent. I could come and leave when I wanted, I guess it's just my own mental thing is I'm very an independent guy. But I think that not having the tenure track and then also wanting to work on more complicated cases and a variety of cases, everything, we handle now from investor visas to asylum refugee cases. So I think those are the reasons to leave, but I don't regret it all. I loved it when I was there. I love the people we helped. And it's really cool to see the students. I mean, students are now like partners at law firms. It was so long ago, and judges, and, they're just doing extraordinary work. and it was cool to have a small piece of that.
Well, I can understand escaping from Houston, so I get that. I did actually have one more question for you. Do you find that there's in criminal law, we have clients get fatigued after a while. If they're facing criminal charges, if they're facing a lot of criminal charges, they may have a good issue and they may have a winning issue, but they sometimes want to give up just because it's too long, too much money, too much stress.
Yeah.
Are you finding that your clients are getting fatigued in this climate?
It's an interesting question. We're seeing a double-edged sword on that. I mean, one is people are actually working on their case when they should have been working on it a long time ago because there's a lot of fear out there. Like, they've been married to a U.S. citizen for 5-7 years, but they never filed. But now they're afraid of what's in there, understandably so, with the ICE raids. And so now they're finally filing. So that's one side of it, is the opposite of fatigue. They're being finally proactive and working on their cases. Another side of it is cases can last a long time depending on the type of case in immigration court. And so you can start to see the fatigue, but a lot of the work may not be done till the trial. So maybe they're not fatigued yet because we haven't really done all the most difficult prep. But one thing that we're seeing, and I wouldn't say it's a whole lot of it, but some of it is like you saw that Supreme Court case that came out recently where somebody could be deported to a third country. And they're a horrible country like Sudan and things. Now, those are people with removal orders, so they don't apply to everybody. But the fear of that, you're starting to see people say, okay, you know what? Why don't I'm from X country. Why don't I get a visa to Spain? I'll just go somewhere else. This is a lot of headache, So you see some of that, but a lot of people, they went through a lot of struggle to come here. And to legally work here and provide for their families. It's not easy to uproot and just go somewhere else. So I would say that's the minority, but it's a trend that's starting to happen some.
All right. Well, thank you. No, that I was curious about that. And my last question is, can I keep this mug?
I say you can.
Okay.
Yeah. It's not my mug, but I say you can.
Well, I don't care. It's mine now.
Well, thanks for being on. I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Have it. All right.